Hello and welcome to week 10's content podcast. We've got a cozy little episode this week because we've got a lot to talk about, and I'll start off by introducing, as always, Josh Excels. Hello.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's been a interesting week content wise. I mean, it's been majority not great, but there's definitely some interesting additions that have come late in the week that we definitely need to get into.
Yeah, and some maybe interesting revelations about EA themselves or the game and how it's going this cycle. And to cover all that, we have back with us game critic and consultant Brammers. Welcome back again.
Hello, thank you for having me. Excited to talk about investor relations reports, always good stuff. and also the Trackstars promo, which I was disappointed to learn was not about players who are good at karaoke. Because I was looking at it, I was going, I know that Bruno Fernandes is supposed to be quite a gifted singer.
Well, yeah, and I think people thought that maybe Trackstars would involve live items because of track or tracking. There was all sorts of speculation, but I guess what we got was basically just built around pace and physical, and that kind of made sense. We'll get into that in a sec. For now though, we need to go back to last week's pound for pound to pick a winner. And what I'm going to do is get producer Luke to pick, because we are all of course biased having nominated players. And he has just whispered in my ear, I am not making this up, that I have won with Centurions Sinclair. So there we go. And we can move on to this week's pound for pound. So let's start off with a nomination from you, Brammers.
Yeah, first of all, I mean, you may not have been making it up, but I do think we need a VAR on the circumstances in which you were just awarded that. But never mind. So, I mean, there's a few interesting choices. Actually, after doing my first weekend league, it's basically gold 𝘬𝘯𝘬𝘦 for 135k, because you need that card, or there's almost no point. I think actually though, I'm probably just going to cheekily take the 𝗵𝗫 Tel from the new World Tour League SBC. So this is like the card you get by completing the whole set. It comes through the objectives menu, when I saw this card leaked, I thought that's going to be quite an expensive card if it's on the open market, for one very important point, which is that he obviously has the Power Shot Plus, Playstyle Plus, which if you've not used it, you are missing out. It is, I wouldn't say broken, but it's extremely potent this year. If you're green timing them as well, it's just some of the goals you can score are absolutely absurd. And if you're playing at pro level, some of the goals you score make esports in this game look ridiculous. Even as just a general card, though, this would be a very good objective card, even if you didn't have that Playstyle Plus, I think, as an upgrade over his 77 rated rare gold. He's been given massive boosts all across the shop. Stamina's gone up to 81 from 67, which is his biggest boost on any individual stat, but he's also had, heading accuracy is up 15. But the rest of them are just up a lot across the board. He can play striker, right mid, left mid. He's got 4 different role pluses. They're giving him a bunch of extra play styles, just the silver ones, as well as Power Shot Plus. But it really is all about that Power Shot Plus, because once you get into the habit of hitting those, you will just score more goals than you would otherwise.
Yep, I think it's a great starting nomination, and probably snatched out of the claws of our next nominator. I don't know, maybe you had someone else in mind anyway, Josh.
For me, it's a good. Tel's a good card, but 11 squads. That's just ridiculous. Come on, what are we doing here? I'm going to go for a card that I've not really seen anybody talk about. Not seen any real reviews on him. His price is everyone's forgotten he's there. But I look at the card and I can't believe no one's talking about him. And it's Milinkovic Savic, 𝘰𝗍𝗍𝘀, not 𝗲𝗎𝗎. His Trackstars card is genuinely ridiculous and is open for an evolution, is open for an evolution in the not too distant future. He's only 86 rated, 4-star, 5-star. He is 𝘭𝑪𝘬𝑔. He's been given a huge upgrade from his base version: 19 acceleration, 17 sprint speed, 14 agility and 15 balance, plus 1s and 2s across the board. I think there's a bit extra in stand and slide tackle. And I'm looking at, say, Granit Xhaka. Now, okay, league links, I'll take that. It's probably easier to get Xhaka into a team, but I don't really understand the difference in prices between these two at all. He's got box-to-box plus, and there was a great thread on Twitter of somebody who was testing out Roll++s, and they gave like the heat maps between a player without box, and with it. And the difference is genuinely mental. You then look at his play styles, and when I've used him, he is a cheat code from corners. He's not quite Van Dijk, but I actually think I score more with Milinkovic-Savic than I do with Van Dijk because he's got good shooting, but he has aerial and power header as base play styles. He's got relentless first touch, incisive pass, and trivela. Both incisive pass and trivela means that any kind of modified through ball, so if you're doing the swervies, he is very, very good at those. And if you get it kind of into a trivela angle, he'll hit it as a trivela, which are also just as powerful. But you give this card an engine, and it's one of the best box-to-box midfielders in the game. He's obviously massive. He's 6'4". It's mind-blowing to me that he is 18k. Again, going back to that Granit Xhaka, who was 300k in release and is 220k now. And then I go like, oh, but what are his links? Neymar?
Who's still really good.
Good. You've got like that informed Ruben Neves, pretty like interesting. We got the Al-Dassari SBC, which I think is still live, the left midfielder. You've got João Cancelo, Banu, all from the same club. So then you just need like either a manager with a Saudi link. I don't know. It is crazy to me how cheap this card is. I think it's one of those that even if you're not going to like play with a card, buy it and put it in your club, because one evolution that gives him better pace and shooting, pace and defending, passing and defending. This is going to be a lights out card.
Yeah. And it's funny because before we started, you mentioned that you were going to be possibly nominating Donovan. And I said, actually, it's funny. I was thinking of nominating him, and I thought you were still going to go with him. And so I was going to go with Sergej Milinkovic-Savic. So
we're just two alike.
Yeah. And I guess I will go Landon Donovan. I think basically because 150k is sort of a relatively, I guess, affordable amount if you're building up coins. It's the kind of amount people might want to spend on a key forward. And I just think Quick Step Plus this cycle, because of how tricky it is to get a yard on these very leggy defenders and how it's tricky to punish them if they make a mistake. Quick Step Plus really helps with that. And I think his build, the fact he's not weak, I mean, he's not super strong, but he's not weak, he's fairly agile, he's got a really good shot on him, really quick, has rapid and first touch, which is nice as well for getting a yard, and he's quite positionally flexible. At least he has cam striker and right mid. And yeah, his array of stats make him well-rounded, and obviously he's going to get full chem. He may help you to get chemistry on MLS players, I guess, potentially, or USA players who are obviously fairly popular this cycle. So while I maybe can't argue he's better value than Milinkovic-Savic, he is really good. And I'd nominate him. And actually, we should move swiftly on. Maybe I'll just summarize the SBCs because we've got a lot of other stuff to cover at the moment. And I actually think maybe it's fairly straightforward here. You've got Zanetti, Diaz, and Beasley. I think Beasley is probably the weaker of those because he has no defensive play styles, but is definitely better at left back and maybe isn't so suited in terms of roles. But, the chemistry could be helpful from him. But of course, even more helpful than him for chemistry is Zanetti. Icon chemistry is great, but he lost his anticipate on this version. Obviously, he's quicker. He'll be a decent fullback, sure. But I do worry about him getting bullied, to be honest, because without anticipate, Bruiser with his, 70 aggression, 75 strength, something like that, that is not going to help you in physical challenges. If you come up against someone like Leao, for example, or whoever we're getting in the future, I guess we've had that Darwin Núñez, these physical, fast players, I think he's going to struggle with those. And I think it's almost the opposite with Diaz. I think Diaz is very good in terms of being a solid centre-back. He isn't actually the tallest and he doesn't have aerials, so there is a question mark there, but the bruiser is going to be nice. He is missing the anticipate, but he's obviously very physical. And I think he's a good option. If he's going to be someone that fits your team in terms of chemistry, I think, it's not a bad SBC. He's sort of higher tier in his position, I think, than the other two. But yeah, it's nice to see, I guess, this kind of level of SBC. And talking about SBCs, we have more to discuss on this, and we'll be doing that right after the break. Hello, welcome back after the break. So we get to get a bit nostalgic here because we have sort of had League SBCs back, which I think some people may not be that familiar with, I guess. Brammers, do you want to take us through a little bit maybe about what
Down
League
memory
SBCs
lane, absolutely.
Yeah, because the early days of League SBCs are fond memories for Ultimate Team.
The halcyon days of yore in FIFA Ultimate Team, as it once was. They used to release, I mean, like now we have mixed leagues and premium leagues or whatever the hell it's called. But it used to be that they would release a massive League SBC for, I think it was basically all the top leagues. And it would not just include a few SBCs where you needed some token players from individual clubs. It would have all of the clubs. And you would need a large, like often like 11, but sometimes 6 or whatever from that specific club.
Yeah.
So you'd have people at the start of the cycle like stockpiling all the Premier League players and whatever, and it was great fun. But the thing was, the pack rewards were all great. They were all tradable back then. And the group, like the kind of group completion bonus was often like a massive chunk of coins and a player. So you would like finish I used to have a job that I didn't particularly like at one stage, and I would sit there on my lunch break and most of the afternoon just doing the Serie A SBC over and over again, buying all the players and opening mega packs. And God, you could even get like rare player packs from some of those squads. It was crazy. And then you'd get the 25k and another copy of the SBC player. It was great. And one time, actually, Ben, this is relevant to your interests, I actually packed Ronaldinho from from the Roma SBC. God bless. At that point the most valuable card I'd ever packed at like 2.5 million coins. Absolutely amazing. So I mean, like people love this stuff, and I guess we'd all kind of made our peace with it having gone and probably not coming back until yesterday evening when we got something that, well, not exactly the same, definitely is reminiscent of the good old days.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Josh, because there's quite a mixed reaction to this, and I think that might be partly because people are a little bit disgruntled with content generally, it feels like. So they were ready to hate, basically. But I think actually if you take a look at this, maybe it's not as bad as that, and it does have its place, I suppose, this World Tour France League SBC.
Yeah, as you could hear from Brammer's wonderful history lesson of League SBCs of old, there is an immense amount of nostalgia attached to those League SBCs. The fact you remember exactly which club's SBC it was that you got the pack from, it says an awful lot. And I know those things. Teams like Paderborn that no one really remembers. No one could point to it on a map, but good Lord, if I could spot that badge from a mile off, because if you got it in a bronze pack, that was 15k. Like this, people have cried out for old style League SBCs. And this is kind of the call and response that we've got from EA, where it's reminiscent of those old League SBCs whilst being entirely different and a completely different prospect altogether. So I want to break this down in multiple ways. The first thing I would say is, when we've got player SBCs for a good, desirable player that isn't going to be too expensive, what has often been the complaint is that if it's, say, an 85 and an 86 rated squad, how do you get that fodder on a regular enough basis that you could complete a player that might not be in your team for a long period of time? And the kind of, that's not the player we have, has been the response. People's SBC storage, the duplicate storage, tends to be packed with players from 78, 79 to 82, 83 rated players, and not very much above that unless they've been really, really saving up. And that's mainly due to all of the packs that we get from objectives that tend to be 78 doubles, or 80 by 5s, or 80 by 2s, or 81 by 2s, or 80 by 3s. We get an 84 by 2 when we complete the rush objectives. So we tend to have a lot of rare golds in that area. If you then look at Rivals rewards, where there's 75 by 50s, 75 by 75s, if you look at the season pass, there's a 75 by 100 there. We have rare golds mostly around that 78 to 82 rating, just teeming out of our clubs at the moment. And this is the SBC that's been given to give those cards a place to go. And I understand that the optics of an 80 rated squad, which is what you need for 9 of the 11 segments here, for an Electrum Players Pack, for example, which is what 2 of those segments give, feels like that's ridiculous. It's an 80 rated squad, and all I'm getting is 6 silvers, 6 golds, and only one of them's going to be rare. I totally get that feeling if you look at it in isolation. But if you open it up, where else can you turn untradeable players into tradable packs? There are very few places. We get marquee matchups, and then you get player SBC segments. They are the only places, really, aside from the odd challenge SBC, where you can turn untradables into coins. This gives you a place to put all of those 78 to 83 rated cards that are useless. If we're being honest, useless in everything else, really. You might be able to complete like the cheap Player of the Month SBC. I mentioned 𝘬𝘃𝗲𝗏 earlier, but they're not that. People have got more of these cards than they're using. You can now put them in somewhere and get tradable cards back. The requirements are an interesting aspect to this. In the first 2 squads are fairly easy. So it's 11 players from the Women's French League, with a max 2 from the same club, a max team rating, min team rating of 74 with chemistry of 26, and then the same but for Liga or Ligue 2. So both of the men's leagues in France. So they're fairly easy segments. The rest of them are 80 rated squads with 26 chemistry, and then have a min 1 player requirement from 2 clubs within Liga. So either 𝘬𝘃𝗲𝗏 or PSG, Le Havre or Olympique Lyon. So, although they're not in Liga anymore, are they? They're getting relegated to Ligue 2, but that's a story for a different time. So what you can do with these SBCs is just get those 2 players from the clubs that you need, and then build 9 other players from 1 league in the rest of the squad, get your 27 chemistry from those 9 players, and then you can submit the SBC. So if you've got, a bunch of Premier League 80 to 82s, if you've got a bunch of, League of Portugal 80 to 82s, you can complete these SBCs super easily. And then what you get back are small tradable packs. So there's a small Electrum Players Pack, small Prime Electrum Players Pack, an Electrum Players Pack, Gold Players Pack, and a Premium Electrum Players Pack. The group reward is a mega pack. All the packs are tradable. And then in the objectives, you get the 𝗫𝑐𝑖 Tel and an 84x2. The Tel part is the final bit of this that I want to reference, which is that is a really good card that would probably be fairly expensive on the market. It has some negatives to it. It's not the perfect card. It's the kind of classic objective/cheap SBC card that EA give us. But as he's French from a big club in a big league with power shot plus 4-star, good pace, that's usually quite an expensive player. And the way you can get that card is to put in a load of 80 rated squads, which is kind of what we'd been asking for. Now, it might be slightly more squads than we'd want, but you also then get all of the tradable packs back from it. I don't think it's perfect, but I definitely think it's a step in the right direction. They have treated this, in my opinion, not as a league SBC, and I think that's where the disconnect is. They've treated this as 80 rated squads for a player. And if you look at the squads back, say, let's go to 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝘀𝘀, who was also released yesterday, you can submit an 85 rated squad and only get a jumbo gold pack back. You can submit an 83 rated squad with a team of the week and only get a small Prime Electrum Players Pack back. So actually, an 80 rated squad giving an Electrum Players Pack or a Gold Players Pack back, that's pretty on par. In fact, some of them are better than what EA is used to giving out. So I think it's like a really good step in the right direction. It's the kind of content we've not really seen from them. It's not brilliant. And if you are buying players to complete it, as in if you're buying all the players to complete it, you're definitely doing it wrong. This is the place to put those useless 78 to 82 rated players that are just sat around in your club or in your duplicate storage. It's there for nearly 2 weeks, so you can complete it over the weeks. You don't have to complete it twice. It's only completable twice. And in fact, if you are looking to get, an 𝘬𝘃𝗲𝗏 player or an 𝘭𝑪𝑗𝗏 player that are 5k at the moment, just give it 3 or 4 days I promise you those prices will come down. They will not stay extinct because you can only do it twice. So there's a limited amount of times people are going to be able to complete it. For those that do lots of BPM like me, last night was a great night because I got to sell an awful lot of cards for an awful lot of coins. And that's the other positive to this, which is that it makes cards that have no value have some value, which I think is kind of what a menu grind should do in some respects, as well as giving us an ability to get packs back. So I think it was positive. I think it's a step in the right direction. If it's a sign of things to come, if it's the toe in the water of, do they actually really want a menu grind? How much does it affect the market? I think it's got to be treated in the manner that it was given, which I think is the stem of an olive branch. It's not quite the full branch there, but I definitely think for the complainers of the menu grind, which I was definitely one of, this is the kind of content I would like to see more of. Once it becomes repeatable, we do then get into a different argument, and as you say, I think we tend to remember the menu grinds from the end of cycles and apply those early in a cycle, and that's not the way the game is built. But I do think there needs to be something repeatable there for people who do want to grind the menus. And I think this is a good start along that path.
Yeah, it's promising. What do you think the kind of future is of this? Because it's, I guess, time to finish at the end of this season. Do we get something else? Probably the next season's Nation as the next League SBC. And is it going to be out for longer than this one? Because I guess it isn't out for that long.
Potentially, I wonder. I think it's going to depend on how this is received. But I do think that the fact that it's time to end with the season suggests to me that it's something they're looking to link to those World Tour players that are in the season pass and that we get throughout the season. So in the first season, it was Spanish players. We've all got that Robert Sanchez still probably sat in our club, and obviously Adama Traore. And this season, it's French players. So you're looking at probably England, Germany, Italy as the next three. Premier League clubs tend to have gold cards, so I wouldn't be overly worrying about that. Maybe you could try and pick up a couple of the Ipswich golds that are, 400 coins right now if you do think that it's going to be an investment opportunity. What I would say is, as soon as you see the leaks begin for whoever the World Tour player is going to be for the next season, look at their nationality, go to that league, and just look at, are there any clubs that don't have any gold cards or only have 1 or 2 gold cards? Because it might be worth just picking up a couple of players from them because you might be able to sell them at max price. But yeah, I think it could be, hopefully, a sign of things to come, where we get a fully linked in objectives, season pass, SBCs kind of trifecta.
Yeah. And actually talking about, things to come, Black Friday is on its way, Brammers, and the market seems to know that.
Yes. So for people who don't have experience of Black Friday as part of Ultimate Team, I mean, probably everyone listening does at this point, but maybe this is more of a refresher. What happens is everyone panics and sells all of the stuff in their club, certainly anything that has value, because the prices with all of the pack supply on Black Friday just plummet. At least that's the theory. And what tends to happen then is that everything drops in price before Black Friday. Black Friday turns up, there's loads and loads of SBCs. There's usually flash SBCs every few hours and endless lightning rounds and just huge packs and SBCs. And then shortly after Black Friday, everything starts to go up again. Particularly fodder often goes really high straight after Black Friday. But yes, what we're seeing already is a bunch of sell-offs. So I think you were saying in the green room beforehand that Hansen's dropped by 100k in a day or so. We're seeing even incredibly meta cards like VVD dropping down. I think he's had the biggest drop in a good few weeks since the Weekend League sell-off. And it's probably only going to continue. I would imagine that if you have expensive gold cards in your club at this point, that you don't really want to have them by the end of the week, because we are edging ever closer. And once someone hits once we start seeing proper leaks and so on, we'll really be off to the races.
Yeah, and for those actually, not keeping track of the global shopping calendar, it is the week after this one, right? That Black Friday should happen?
Yes. So essentially when this season ends, we've literally got a countdown to it from EA and it's the season. When this season ends, Black Friday will be the first thing that happens after that.
Mm.
Something that's quite interesting is traditionally it's been when lightning rounds begin, I think, in FC games, but we've started seeing them earlier and earlier, and we did have them with the most recent promotion. Not to the extent that they will go to eventually, but enough that it's unusual for seasoned watchers of the annual EA cycle. When we get Black Friday, though, it will be like 6 p.m, 7 p.m, 8 p.m, 9 p.m. There used to be a real rhythm to it where you'd get rare player packs at 6, jumbo rare player packs at 7, ultimate packs at 8, or whatever it was. Now, I think with all the crazy packs with their strange names and so on, it's less predictable. But you can definitely, if you watch those accounts that like to leak the pack code, we're going to see some probably quite wild stuff starting to pop up. So if you're one of those people who likes to buy store packs, whether with coins or with the hated FC points, then definitely I wouldn't be doing it before then, because yeah, you're just gonna have buyer's remorse and then end up wasting more of your money.
Yeah, one thing to look out for, Josh, I guess, is there are often flash SBCs and things which can spike player prices of just like, gold non-rares and players like that. So maybe it's a good time to keep your club stocked and not sort of be getting rid of random players from your club, because they tend to get a nice little rise here and there. So keep an eye out for that, I guess.
Yeah, one thing I would say is, if you can go back and check what SBCs were released last year, then I would potentially have a look at that, because they tend to be fairly similar year on year. And you'll be able to discern from those what kind of players might jump up in price. One thing I would also say is that chem styles are unusually cheap at the moment, and I think it's because there's not a lot of churn in people's teams. We're not seeing a lot of players come in and out of squads unless they're 95 rated loan cards. And I think that with Black Friday, we tend to get a big power curve push. It tends to be the first time people pack like good cards. I remember last year packing a Thunderstruck icon was kind of just 10 a penny really by the end of the weekend. And, we do see people finally invest their coins, complete big SBCs. We usually get our first base icon SBC, that's open and uncapped. So you'll see people start moving those into their squad. So maybe if you like a couple of, shadows, hunters, those kinds of chem styles, you can store as many of them as you want in the club. I can't see them going too much lower. There's obviously scope for them to, if you want kind of fairly low risk, easy investment where you don't have to hold a card on your transfer list for a few weeks, that would maybe be what I'd be looking at.
Browns, what do you think about all the high rated fodder people have collected in the hope of them rising? It's now dropped a bit, I think.
Yeah, EA has absolutely wrecked everyone, haven't they? I really feel for
the safest investment in the world.
Well, the thing is, it still is.
Yeah, no, it still is. It's even better than ever. Get more.
There's. So like, if you bought 700 𝘬𝘬𝗪𝘚, basically everybody in the Discord. God, it's been miserable, hasn't it? Because they do just keep going down and down, and it's because the SBCs don't need high rated fodder yet. There's very, very few, even things like the base hero pack. It's like an 86 squad, and these really expensive players that EA seems to be, I would say, artificially trying to avoid asking for anything that is super high rated.
And is that because it's hard to get high rated fodder currently? I mean, I'm assuming that's why, because that makes sense in a way.
You could say that. You could also argue that maybe their telemetry from previous years, when they have been asking for that sort of thing, has shown bad things or things they didn't particularly like in terms of market or player habits. I mean, who knows? We don't have enough transparency to sort of to have it open to useful speculation. But it's definitely telling. Like we had SBCs, I would say last year. Josh will probably have better recollection of this than me, but where you would have like an 85 squad, but it required 2 87s or something. And we just haven't seen that sort of thing. And that's what's kept everything, nice and low. God, I mean, like, if you're still sitting on it and you're getting sick of it and you see a better investment opportunity that will bring you a return on your coins, there's no harm in cashing out, but you are going to take an initial loss at least. That said, you could just keep holding, because we don't know for absolute 100% certain, but in years gone past, after Black Friday, often immediately after it, sort of sometimes very same weekend, fodder can skyrocket as the big SBCs hit critical mass and there's more demand for high rateds. Sometimes we get things like, as Josh said, the repeatable base icon, or just the open base icon pack, maybe not repeatable, but they then also picks, when we start getting picks for things like heroes and icons, fodder goes crazy because people love that stuff. So I mean, like, don't give up if you can afford to not give up. But you're still holding, and it's just a little bit longer than everybody thought.
I do think the biggest difference between this year and last year, I did a load of research for a video on Nep's channel about what's happening with content in FC 25 and why it feels so different to previous years. And by this time last year, we had Beckham's base icon SBC, Blanc's base icon SBC, we'd had 𝘬𝘃𝗍𝘀𝘁 base icon SBC, we'd had 𝘭𝘪𝘬𝘦 Centurions, and we'd had another Centurions, maybe it was 𝘵𝘃𝗲𝗏, somebody like that. Anyway, we'd had another Centurions icon SBC as well. And then we got to Black Friday and we got 𝘵𝘵𝗍𝘏𝗍 Centurions SBC. And those icon SBCs were the things that spiked fodder because they needed a big squad, but they were genuinely good, usable players that were pushing players out of people's squads. We've only had 2 icon SBCs so far this year, and both of them are probably not better than what people already have in their teams, and certainly aren't worth doing as an upgrade of what people have in their teams. So I don't think it's just about the accessibility of fodder, which is what a lot of people say, which is why these cards aren't being completed. I just don't think we've had, that Blanc last year really was in pretty much everybody's team. It was kind of like the 𝗵𝗃𝗏𝗏 of this year. So I think that's one of the big aspects that I think you're right, Brammers. I think that will change over Black Friday.
Yeah. Also, there's a lot of supply around Black Friday in terms of players, both untradeable and tradable coming into the game. And EA have to hoover that up, basically. They have to find a way to get rid of that. Otherwise, the game kind of it doesn't work. That's how the model works. And so they will look to release SBCs, which, presumably will have some high-rated squads, I would imagine, around that time. And as that supply dries up after Black Friday, as Brammer said, the SBC fodder tends to rise as a result of that. So I guess, keep holding is the bottom line, but I can appreciate for some people, they may not be too keen to.
Diamond hands, baby.
Just keep at it. But on that, we'll take a break and we're going to come back to talk very briefly about Evos this weekend and talk about how EA feel to start the cycle, or I guess the last cycle as well, has gone in their investor report in just a second. Hello, a quick reminder in this break to both listeners and supporters. There is a supported Discord for gold or icon supporters of the podcast, and in there you'll find a whole section where you can arrange rush matches and get some good teammates to make progress. And there is a champs channel for commiserating about champs generally or getting a bit of advice. And there's the 𝑚𝑦𝑡 channel, which is specifically for all Ultimate Team advice. There's plenty of other resources in there too, and a fantastic community. So if you haven't signed up already, then do sign up, become a supporter on the gold or icon tiers, and you'll get the bonus podcast that you get on the bonus podcast tier, plus access to the Discord too. It would be great to have you in there. Just search support for weekly and you can find the options for signing up over on Patreon. A huge thank you if you decide to do so, and a huge thank you, of course, to all those supporters keeping the podcast going. And let's jump back into this week's pod. Hello, welcome back after the break. Right, as I said, very quickly, let's cover Evos because, frankly, Josh, I think this is probably the worst weekend of Evos we've ever had.
Yeah, and I love evolutions, but it's been difficult to love them this weekend. I want to say that I think it started off okay. Now You See Me's not a bad evolution at all. No. I think it really has made some really good, fun cards. I don't know if anyone's seen that 𝗪𝘓𝘀 card, the English striker. I think he's from Huddersfield. He's 6'9" and just looks silly in game. And this gave you the ability to make him very good. I think the issue that people have, and where I'm kind of... I'm sympathetic to this because I do think it's a bit silly, is that Now You See Me gave 40 pace up to a maximum of 90. So any card that had above 50 pace was going to get capped out. they've set the max pace at 69, and I don't know why. I don't understand what it is, and I really wish, maybe at some point, I hope that the content team could give us like just an example of an evolution like this, why we set pace at 69. These were the cards we were worried about if it was 70, 71, 72, because I know a lot of people that were doing Evo squads that are doing Evo chains where their card would fit into this, but has like 73 pace. And it's like, oh, well, now I can't get this genuinely ginormous boost to my card because he's got 2-3 more pace than is needed. So but let's take it in isolation. I thought it was a good evolution. Like it was free, gives you a decent card, an okay playstyle plus, not my favorite, but rapid, it has its place. And then we had Wonder Wing and Track Thunder, and both of these evolutions are just a bit. I understand that the Evo is supposed to relate to the promo, and so the promo is about track and field stars, so fast and strong. And so both of these evolutions focus on pace and physicality, really. There's a bit in dribbling for the Track Thunder one, including +8 composure, which is really good. My issue with both of these Evos is the overall upgrade that they're given. So the Track Thunder one gave a +4 to the card, but gives you 4 pace, 1 to 2 dribbling, and between 3 and 5, maybe 6 physical, depending on the stats that your card already has. There's a potential you could get a +4 to your card and not receive any upgrade. And that's just silly. It's just a silly implementation of this system. Now, I will say that I think people maybe misunderstand this in a different way. So I want to go back to Titan's Guard from Centurions. It was the final one that we got there. And I saw a lot of people looking at the cards that could go into Titan's Guard, the 84 rated, the 83 rated cards, the already very good centre-backs, and going, this is useless, it doesn't give them an upgrade. But actually, if you looked at the stats that were given in Titan's Guard, if you were to give that to a centre-back that was 64 rated, the upgrade was way bigger than the +2 overall. It gave them like 12 physical and 10 defending. Of course, for those high-rated players who've already got 80 plus pace, who've already got 80 plus defending and 80 plus physical, the upgrade is going to be smaller. That's the point of stat limits on these evolutions. I just feel like in both Wonder Wing and Track Thunder, they've misaligned the upgrade to the maximum boost that you can get. And so it makes the lower boosts even worse, because if you make a card above 84 rated at the moment, it's not going into another evolution. So it's really putting a card in a +4 to not get a lot of stats back. There are very few cards, I would say, that this is worth putting into as an evolution, and I don't know if I've ever said that about any other Evo.
Yeah, I genuinely think both Track Thunder and Wonder Wing are kind of traps, to be honest, for your Evos. Like, they will potentially lock them out of future evolutions without a good enough upgrade to justify it. And maybe the only thing I can see here which could be helpful from Track Thunder is that +8 composure, but it doesn't boost reactions. And actually, that's something that EA did as well with the Le Bleu evolution. They also didn't boost reactions on that, and it meant that you saw players coming out of it whose reactions were quite far behind the rest of their dribbling stats. For those who don't know, reactions is pretty important. There's a reason why they often produce players with lower reactions. It's to kind of keep the power curve level or stop it shooting up, because they don't react to things as well, but they also sort of have less responsive dribbling animations and things like that. So be careful about leaving reactions behind, because of course the way that the evolution boosts work, if they're boosting the stat category, they're going to boost the higher stats more and the lower stats less. So you'll see this big disparity between certain stats. And if that's reactions, I think that can be a big issue. So I'd really watch out for putting any players into something like Track Thunder and anything which isn't, I guess, boosting important stats. It's boosting other stats. But there is that composure boost. So that could be nice if the player does have high reactions, but has a low composure, which isn't that common, but can happen. But again, you've got a rapid plus playstyle, which I don't know how useful it is. You've got that big boost to the overall. So yeah, agree with what Josh has said. And we can move on to the EA intel we've gained through their reporting. And maybe Brammers, you want to just do a little introduction as to what we have seen.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be delighted. So as a publicly traded company, every quarter EA has to talk to its investors, bloody investors, about its financial results and about its future planning and sort of what's gone wrong, what's gone well, etc. And if you are so inclined, you can actually go and read transcripts of the earnings calls that they have with all of the investment groups and so on after the fact. And these can be quite revealing because they usually go beyond what's in the basic financial reporting. And they will often delve into sort of the how specific franchises and strategic bets are playing out. So what we can see by looking at the most recent EA earnings call transcript is some early indicators about how 𝘵𝚽𝗰𝗶𝗹 is doing and how EA feels about it. Now, it's important when you're looking at this kind of information to understand the context that it's being provided. So when EA talks to investors, they're not talking about whether the games are good, or they're not talking about sort of how they do in a kind of broad sense. They're usually talking about the things they will prioritize are what is it doing to our financials, what are the big new features that are playing off, what makes us look good to Wall Street. And you can see that in how they talk about FC. So in the earnings report, Andrew Wilson, for _𝗏𝑖, tells investors that FC is doing very well. He says that in its second year, plus 25 or whatever the other ones were, the platform is thriving, he says, as both interactive entertainment and as a global influencer across the world's game. Isn't that nice? And he's talking about how FC Mobile and FC Online are doing very well, and that with those gathered together, they've reached 130% more players worldwide. So what they're doing there is they're demonstrating to the investors, top line audience growth above and beyond what is normal. And that's the sort of theme that you will see. When they talk about FC, they also say, we continue to drive deep engagement across our titles. He's talking broadly about live service titles here, and saw live services net bookings growth in the quarter year over year. Now, while that does include other games besides FC, the only, FC is by far and away the largest contributor of revenue in terms of live service for everything EA does. And also, the other games that do quite well are, if not floundering, they're kind of off cycle. Like Apex Legends isn't doing terribly well at the moment. Madden, I actually don't know what Madden sort of does.
It's been having a bit of a struggle as a game, actually, just generally. So I think probably, it's not coming from there, but yeah.
So there's that we're really talking about FC primarily. And they said, if they're saying it's growing year over year, then that means that they had a very good first couple of months of 𝘵𝚽𝗰𝗶𝗹 in terms of monetization. And to be fair, that's also been evident in some external reporting. There's an industry analyst group called 𝘬𝗠𝘬𝘦 that does regular reports. You'll probably see them mentioned in Games Press all the time, and they said that FC was, I think, by far and away the largest revenue generating game in September. But it's interesting to look at this in terms also of what Wilson says about the game experience, because we're sitting in the trenches playing Ultimate Team, and we're complaining about gameplay balance and stuff, and it is so far away from the considerations of the people who actually decide the budgets for these games that it's quite funny. So for example, Wilson begins by talking about the incredible leap forward in social play that 𝘵𝚽𝗰𝗶𝗹 represents. Now, you and I probably would not characterize the game in those exact terms, but he points out, first and foremost, Rush is a big deal. New creator tools like the highlighter. Would that even have occurred to any of us to bring up? He says the deeply social 5v5 Rush experience is loved by new and old players alike, and has been a preferred way to play by more than half of our veteran players. And it's so interesting to see how engagement figures are interpreted compared to what we probably anecdotally think the experience is. And they talk about how it's driving Ultimate Team engagement, especially those playing with friends. And this is really interesting because it's an indicator of a metric that clearly matters to EA, which is people playing with friends, people actually socializing with each other, which is often a difficult thing with 𝗡𝐶 because it's quite a one-on-one game. And let's face it, we all hate our opponents and want them to fail. So having something different here, which is people playing together and happy, joy, blah, 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 is different and interesting for them, and something that they can say to the market is good. Also because they know that in their other titles, happy friend groups playing together increases monetization. So he says, and in fact, he says this pretty much directly. He says, we've witnessed that when friends play together, we see deeper engagement for longer with a positive impact on monetization. And while this is early with 𝗡𝐶25, these trends are continuing. Now, putting my industry watcher hat on, what that probably means is that they are going to keep doubling down on things like Rush and things that make us play together. That could potentially be good for us. Like, I think, people have spoken of their desire for a co-op weekend league, that kind of thing. But if he's basically saying Rush is giving us the return on investment that we were hoping for, literally and figuratively, and I think from that we can extrapolate that we'll see more of it. Elsewhere in his comments, what else does he talk about? So in answer to one of the this is actually switching over to Stuart Canfield, who's the chief financial officer. He's talking more, as you would imagine, about the monetary side. I mean, he's talking about massive increases in net bookings, 20% up year on year, all sorts of things like that. He's very happy about 𝗡𝐶25, as you would imagine he would be, being in charge of EA's financials. And he said he's pointing again to 𝗡𝐶 Mobile and 𝗡𝐶 Online doing well, which is nice for them. He's also saying that he expects 𝗡𝐶 to continue to basically make more money per quarter going forward in this financial year. And he's expecting the next quarter, which for them is their financial year Q3, to have increases in net bookings, which is sort of the overall revenue figures. This is partly driven by the launch of the new Dragon Age game, but continued growth of the EA Sports FC franchise is the other thing he mentions. Beyond that, there's not a lot in there, but there is one more comment from Canfield later on, where he's answering an analyst question, where the analyst is sort of talking about, he's asking for a breakdown of live services in terms of guidance for the year, and whether how much it'll be up. And he says, we expect growth in our FC franchise over last year, which was a record year for them, which is obviously their live service business. And I think, we can take from this that they've had a very good couple of months in terms of the launch, and more than that, they are very excited about the difference that Rush is making to the metrics that they care about and its impact on monetization.
Yeah, which is interesting. And I think we're probably due to talk more about Rush at some point, because I don't know whether that excitement from them necessarily reflects the state that Rush is in for a lot of players, but it does suggest maybe they are going to try and improve it as time goes on and not just kind of leave it as it is. So
yeah, I think it's interesting in that it's they would have, I would love to, I haven't had a chance to go back and look at what they said when 𝗏𝗏 launched, because what I would imagine they would do is they would say, oh yeah, the game's doing really well and people like 𝗏𝗏. What's interesting, the difference here obviously is the monetization aspect. Now, we've said, I think I've said on here in the past that EA, when they say we're listening to players, what they mean is they're looking at the receipts. Like if they see changes in revenue patterns, then they will react to that. And it's not the only metric they have that determines how they do things. Obviously, the people making the game care about it and they want it to be better. But in terms of the people giving it, resources, they notice when there are changes to monetization. And if they're seeing that Rush is a new way for the game to make more money over and above the things it has already been doing, then they may see that as an investment opportunity. So, we said we liked Rush initially, but it has some problems. This could be really good for the future of Rush. This could mean that they say, well, it makes more money, so let's invest in it properly next year rather than letting it die on the vine like they have with Moments and things like that. But yes, it is one of the things that you definitely notice as an FC player I would say we're all hardcore FC players, and most of the community that we kind of consider ourselves part of is they're talking about a completely different thing to the experience we have day to day. And whilst, as I say, the developers do care about the experience we have and will try to prioritize it, this is indicative of where they actually are likely to invest.
It's a very good summation, and there was definitely some things in the way that they talked about the game that took me by surprise. I would just kind of temper a few bits. This earnings report was to the end of September. So the earnings that they were commenting on were like just covered the beginning of the game and will have covered pre-orders and build up to the game. So, when they talk about an increase year on year, that does help. They released a brand new game this year, college football. So that will have also helped their revenues increase. How that affected the Madden earnings, they didn't really delve into too much detail on. If I was an investor, I would be kind of interested in some of the wording that they used around live services, specifically around FC. They were still expecting growth in live services year on year in the next quarter, so from October to December. And they did this 6 times, I think, during the call, referenced a record year of net bookings in live services last year in FC 24. So I don't know if that's they're maybe kind of tempering expectations on the size of growth in live services, or if that's just me reading far too much into use of the word still. And yeah, so it was definitely an interesting call. I'm looking forward to the next one, because I think that will be the one where we truly find out what went on in this quarter, because for the player base, it feels like people are switching off and not playing as much. And it would be interesting to see if that's reflected, because I think it speaks to maybe a wider thing of the community believes we're a lot bigger part of this game than we actually are. The number of people that are online and engage with FC content, whether that be on YouTube or on Twitter or listening to the podcast, is way smaller than the number of people that will actually decide whether this game is a success or not from EA's point of view, and of course their investors. But yeah, it's an interesting read for those of you that care about that side of the game. Definitely interesting to hear how they talk about the game. You have got to temper it, as Bram has said, with the fact that they are talking to investors, and so they're trying to portray everything as positively as possible.
Yeah, and of course we've had the release of Call of Duty since then, so there are various factors that won't have yet been considered about this cycle so far. So it'll be interesting to see how things go, and we'll keep people abreast, because it certainly gives you an insight in terms of what EA are going to be investing into in the game moving forward. And of course, they announced that there's going to be sort of a big new thing. I think it's coming to FC in maybe a year or so that they've been working on, which is seemingly some kind of open world type thing. So we'll see what happens there. But I think on that, we're probably ready to wrap up. So thank you very much to our guests here. Thank you very much to Brammers for coming on. Always good to have you.
Yes, thank you for having me. And if you're interested, I do have a cheeky hero pack I could open. Do we want to do some horrendous guesses? I should say I've had so far when I've done these, I've had Dudek, Carragher, and Solskjaer. So and Crouch. So we're definitely due a good one.
Okay,
but
I'm going to be optimistic. 𝘧𝗫𝗄, I'm going to go for.
Oh, that'd be lovely.
Oh wow. I'm going to go 𝗬𝘃𝗲.
I'd love either of those. Okay, so you're all right. I'm going to open it in 3, 2, 1. All right, it's a guy, Cam, Uruguay.
Oh, is it Francescoli?
I think it's Francescoli.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. He's got first touch plus. Oh, that's
good.
That's very nice. I'm very surprised.
yeah. And Shadow Striker plus as well, which is a nice.
Oh yeah, no, I'll absolutely take that. Great. Well, I'm going to have to open all my gamble packs with you guys from now on, clearly. Anyway, thank you very much.
You're welcome. And thank you very much as well to Josh. It's been good to have you on.
Yeah, it's been great. Slightly less exciting. I packed Rodri for one of the tradable Electrum players pack from the World Tour SBC, so definitely worth doing,
Yeah. And are you going to hold him or are you going to sell him?
Oh, he's sold. He's already gone.
Oh, he's already
gone. Oh, same with my Cole, my icon, Ashley Cole from Preview Pack earlier this week. I didn't want to mention it too early in the podcast, but I thought I'd bring it up now.
Damn. Yeah, wow, that Francescoli looks pretty bad now, eh? But yeah, no, great. And we wrap up there. So yeah, thank you very much to all you listeners out there listening in. If you'd like to support the podcast, it's just £3 a month and you get double the podcast content, including this week's supporter gameplay episode, which is going to be, quite a kind of personal breakdown. Personal sounds a bit intense, but it's going to be a chat between Josh and I about our current progress in Ultimate Team, both in terms of sort of gameplay and squad. So if people are interested in that, then do tune in to this week's supporter episode. You can find that on the Patreon. Just search Support for weekly, and head over to Patreon and you can sign up there. If you do, a huge thank you for doing so. And if you currently support, then a huge thank you to you too. And a big thank you too to those icon patrons. Dave B, Hugh J, Jeff B, Darren W, Warren A, Stephen M, Waterman, Dan W, Roger D, Rob P, Lee A, Dom P, L M, Damon H, The Shirt Locker, Alex M, Tom B, Jake S, Neil P, Michael K, David G, Andrew R, Michael H, Jimmy K, Brendan T, 𝘵𝘀𝘀𝗧𝗏, Michael B, Brian V, Josh R, Brent P, Rob W, and 𝘵𝘂𝘁. Plus a special thanks to Luke M, Dave B, Hugh J, Tom M, Darren W, and Pato Foot for advice and production assistance. Before I leave you, just one more thing to add though. Ultimate Team is a bit like life really. It has its many ups and downs. If you're having a few more downs than ups in real life in these more difficult times, then please don't feel that you're alone or need to struggle on without taking action. If you go to 𝘃𝗲𝗁𝑧𝑜𝑛.net, there's loads of resources, advice, support, or even just a friendly chat for anyone who needs it. If it sounds like it could help you, then head over to 𝘃𝗲𝗁𝑧𝑜𝑛.net. And for now, have a good one, and I'll catch you on the next podcast.